Who here has an electric car? Raise your hand. They're all over the place. How feasible is it for public utilities to go green? Take a look at the man in the street interviews.
What do you think about the growing regulations mandating electric vehicles? Are you in favor or do you have concerns?
Yeah, I would say I have concerns with being able to sustain, all of the cars that are coming out that are electric, and if we have enough power to keep them powered up without more power outages that are going on with people's homes and all that.
I'm in favor. I think there should be more electric cars on the road. I think also they're a lot cheaper in terms of you don't have to buy gas all the time, so it helps a lot of people, except some of the electric cars are a lot more expensive. So that's a little concerning. But if they were cheaper, then I guess a mandate would be a lot better.
I have concerns about how it might affect me economically. Like, I'm all for environment, but I also want to know how it's going to hit my pocketbook.
I have concerns also, just because I'm always concerned when the government gets involved in the regulation. It just doesn't seem like it does it very efficiently, and I'd like to see it be more driven by choice, consumer choice.
How important do you think it is for public agencies to lead by example in adopting electric vehicles? Do you think this will encourage the general public to do the same?
I think it would, especially if they employ smart branding, marketing, and kind of add more of an edge to it rather than it just being a good thing. Like, I think if they add some allure, then there will be a public follow through with that.
I'd say it's important. I don't know if it'll encourage the general public to do the same. I could see a lot of people getting upset, like being forced to take electric vehicles or feel like they're pushing it onto people, and in turn that can make people upset, I think.
Do you think the government should mandate electric vehicles, or should the decision be left to the market and consumers?
I think the decision should be left to the consumers and the people out there if they want to pay for gas or use electricity for their cars.
I think the government can facilitate in it, as in taxes and stuff. I don't think they have to mandate it exactly, but I think they could have a hand in sort of encouraging it in a way, yeah.
What do you think will be the biggest cost of mandating electric vehicles for public agencies? Do you think the benefits will outweigh these costs?
I'm not really sure. I feel now that with electric vehicles, they're more expensive, right? And I feel like not everyone can afford an electric vehicle. But I don't think in the future it'll be better. It's kind of uncertain, so I don't have a good answer for that. But I don't think it'll be better in the future.
Superficially speaking, and from the information that we have now, it would. However, we don't know the long-term effects of electronic vehicles and the impact on our health. I think that's something that we still need to learn more about, and that would compound into the cost. So.
All right. This session will explore the intricate process of decarbonizing the electric grid through the experiences of key water agencies within the state. Each agency demonstrates unique adaptations to evolving energy landscapes, highlighting a spectrum of risks, lessons learned, and significant opportunities for similar entities. Now it's my turn to take a little bit of a break. Your moderator for this session will be Charley Wilson, who's Executive Director of Southern California Water Coalition. He's joined by Marco Tule, Board Member, Inland Empire Utilities Agency, Liz Crosson, Sustainability, Resiliency, and Innovations Officer with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, and Tish, Berge, Assistant General Manager of San Diego County Water Authority. Charley, take it away.
Fritz,
and
thank you very much.
Don't drink the rest of my latte there.
Well, thank you very much. I know you've got very important duties here in about an hour, so we're going to do our level best to let you get tan, rested, and ready, and to come back for lunch. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having us. And I know I had a lot of questions when this program got set up. It's like, okay, we heard a little bit about water and energy, the water energy nexus, and blah, blah, and whatever. So you got the parents, adults at a certain point. And what I have shared with a lot of folks who dare to listen is an adage, as you heard a little bit in the last program. It went like this: for better or for worse, it happens in California first. And let's be real, California is on the leading edge of climate resiliency. And what are the modifications? What are the changes to our utility structure, to how we deliver critical infrastructure to our citizens, our customers, our businesses? And there is a natural nexus between the two. And as we talked about specifically in water and energy resilience, there are some similarities, there are some challenges, and there are frankly a great deal of opportunities that we want to try to share with you today. So as you heard, I have Marco, I have Liz, and I have Tish as three experts. We could expand this panel out to dozens of people and talk about specific issues, specific challenges and opportunities as they have seen it. But today, I want to give you just a little bit of a taste and then get your feedback. And so I want to start with Liz, because you, by proxy of Metropolitan and Metropolitan's service territory covering multi-counties, multi-jurisdictions, Liz, you were brought in very specifically to do something at Metropolitan that is new, that is different, that was transformative in its nature. And I kind of wanted you to sort of frame the discussion for us today as sort of how do you approach this issue, and then kind of some of your experience and sort of how, where are we at today, and then we'll kind of kick off and ask some questions.
Thanks, Charlie, and thanks for having me here this morning. It's great to see some new faces, some familiar faces, and I've really enjoyed the discussion so far. I think, from Metropolitan's perspective, I came in as this Chief Sustainability, Resilience, and Innovation Officer, a brand new position about 2.5 years ago. And really this office is about not really redoing the things of the past, but really trying to elevate the sustainability, the resilience, and the innovative approaches that Metropolitan has long taken in their management of water and their delivery of their core mission. And so what our office has been able to do is really pull together different parts of Metropolitan, whether that's operations and resources and engineering and finance, and really look for ways that we can elevate our efforts. And we've been spending a lot of time on our long-term planning, like many of your agencies have been, really focused on how can we set ourselves up to best adapt to the changing climate. I think, we've heard from almost every panel today about the climate extremes that we're experiencing and the impacts that has on our water resources. So looking at these extended droughts, looking at the extreme heat, extreme wildfire, all of those impacts also impact our water resources. So we are making decisions around how do we best make investments to make sure that we can adapt and continue to thrive and deliver our mission into the future. And so as we at Metropolitan not only are doing this climate adaptation planning, but we also have a climate action plan, and that was actually approved by our board right before, or right after I arrived, but had been developed before I got to Metropolitan. And a lot of people might question, why does Metropolitan have a climate action plan? Why do we have a goal of reaching carbon neutrality by 2045? And there's a couple reasons. One is what I just discussed. We are experiencing climate change and climate extremes, and we are thus faced with uncertainties on the supplies that we have long relied on. So recognizing that we all play a role and we have the opportunity to try to curb those impacts, it's on us as public agencies to take action to reduce those impacts moving forward. And so we have real opportunities to do that, and that's a responsibility that Metropolitan and many other water agencies and the state have taken to reach carbon neutrality. And I want to be clear about what neutrality means. It doesn't mean we're saying zero emissions. What it means is that we're not going to emit more than what we can sequester and capture. So again, opportunities there in land management, in job creation, as well as economic growth. So that's one reason. The other reason that we have a climate action plan to reach carbon neutrality is really regulatory and legally driven. So our climate action plan is a CEQA certified climate action plan, which means that when we do the necessary projects that we need to do to upgrade and improve our infrastructure, build new infrastructure, that we have a climate plan that allows us, that enables us to do that, so long as we're complying within the confines of that carbon budget. And so it's really a piece of enabling policy within Metropolitan that allows us to do the things that we need to do. And so at Metropolitan, in following our climate action plan, our strategies do range. Similar to all water agencies, most of the energy we use, most of the emissions we produce is related to moving water around. And so our electricity use or treating water. And so we do focus on how we can green that portion of our portfolio. So we've changed some of our retail accounts over to green power. We're also, we've implemented solar arrays at our water treatment facilities. We're in the process of building battery storage at those facilities. And we continue to look at other opportunities. So that is the lion's share of our emissions, a lot of opportunity. And plus with the direction that the state is moving and greening their own infrastructure and all of the power resources that we use, we will be on track. And then there's our own kind of emissions that we're in control of, our vehicles, our facilities and our water use, and there's lots of opportunities there that we're pursuing in order to eventually reach carbon neutrality.
So Tish, I'm going to come to you next, because then within that Metropolitan family, one of the things that always got my attention was, there were certain water-related issues that San Diego felt they made certain decisions to move forward with particular types of projects as part of local resource development. I mean, we all have sort of the example, right, of local resource development. You have a very big, noticeable local resource development. And then you've also got some opportunities within the power sector alone. So you actually had very firsthand, what it looks like in that next generational construct. We're not doing it the way we used to do it, right? And to that, for better or for worse. So there are certain changes in the wind, if you will. Talk to us a little bit about San Diego's process and a couple of examples maybe about where you guys have looked at this issue and how you're planning to meet resiliency, both water and power, and then decarbonizing that grid.
Excellent. Absolutely happy to share our story. It was great listening to how water is conservation is a way of life, and then also hearing about how some folks say that we shouldn't be told that we have to drive electric cars. So we are unique in San Diego. We're the end of the pipeline. And about 20 years ago, our region said, you know what, we don't really like being the flea on the tail of the dog and sort of the very end of the pipe and not able to control our own destiny. We were looking down water restrictions that were really going to impact the growth of our biotech sector and other sectors. And it was at that time our board decided we want to have our own water resources so that we don't have someone else telling us how much water we can use and whether we can have a viable region. And so at that time, a very expensive decision was made. And what happens first happens in California. We built a desalination plant, and we did that through a public-private partnership. And that is our most expensive water. It's our most energy-intensive water. But you know what? It's always there. It's 10% of our water portfolio. During the last drought, it allowed us to not have any cutbacks, and so it did protect our region, and that protection comes at a cost. On the flip side, understanding that that's a high energy-intensive water, it's about twice the energy that we use to bring water over from the Colorado River. It's about 50% more than the water that we get from the State Water Project. So we are looking to ways to neutralize that high energy load that we have on the grid. And what we have the benefit of is we do have a few dams in San Diego, and there's one in particular that we just recently raised as part of our reliability and infrastructure investments that would allow us, in partnership with the city of San Diego, to do pumped hydropower storage or an energy storage facility. So you may be hearing about batteries and battery farms and large-scale battery situations. Maybe some have been on fire recently that you've heard about. This is like a water battery. And so we're super excited about that potential. where we pump water when the electricity is cheap and then let it flow down to create electricity when it's needed the most. It's great, especially when you think about trying to offset some of the work that solar does. So we would be able to harness some of that extra electricity, potentially, when the solar grid is generating, and use that later. This will be a very important project for the region, and we're excited to be on the forefront of it.
And there's some challenges we'll talk about in a minute. So I'm going to kind of clean up here, Marco. And for those that don't know, so there's a special skill set that Mr. Tule has, and that he's a nuclear chemist on top of being an elected board member and working in power plants. But you also had the privilege at one point of working in one of the operating nuclear plants in the state of California. So when we talked about climate resiliency and those kinds of things, there were certain lots of benefits that went with that technology. Clearly the storage issue was something else, and so that again, for better or for worse, that story's been written. But it informs your role as a board member. And at IEUA, and I'll do this shout out for the folks because I do know my audience a little bit, being in Orange County, the Inland Empire Utility Agency likes to do a little bit of battle with the folks at Irvine Ranch, because they were the first to do solar and battery storage at the wastewater treatment plant. Irvine was bigger. Except now Orange County Sanitation has the largest battery storage facility west of the Mississippi, so now they've outdone both IUA and Irvine. And our friends at Orange County Water, who operate a fairly substantive water treatment plant that's on roughly the size of a small power plant, which gives you a whole lot of options. So there are clearly things that have been done. IEUA, you guys were into this pretty early. I mean, they've got it all. They've got digester gas, they've got their windmill, they've got solar, they've got battery storage. They have literally experimented with virtually every type of renewable energy. What works, what doesn't. So as a board member, relatively new, but with your background on those beautiful domes on the way to San Diego.
The domes.
That's not what they called them, people. It wasn't domes is what they called them. But your experience sort of, now how are you looking at this issue, and then given your day job, still working in a power plant, how do you see this and how does it inform you as a policymaker at a water agency?
I appreciate that, Charlie. Yeah, so I started my career at San Onofre. I was there for 5 years until they unfortunately decommissioned that power plant. And that was a big portion of clean energy that was a big source for us here in Southern California. And so when that went away, we really saw this increase in imported power coming from out of the state. Something like 40% of our power right now is coming from out of state. And we switched over to fossil fuels. So July 9th, the Energy Information Association, the EIA, said that we burned more natural gas for power generation than the history of mankind. So, we have talked a lot about going green and installing solar power and wind, but what that's coming with is this overinvestment in easy, readily available gas power plants. And so we need to be mindful of how we manage that going forward. And for us in particular in the Inland Empire, being in the inland region, what we're seeing is a lot of our water, because of the location of our basin, we're not able to capture a lot of our recycled water. A lot of that water is actually being delivered to Orange County for free. So thank you guys. You guys are welcome for that. But coming in on the board, seeing that we had some gaps there and finding ways to capture and inject and store the water locally. Some of the first things that we did as a board is very aggressive, and we expanded our management, our OB, they call it OBMP, and we expanded our basin from 600,000 acre feet up to close to 1 million acre feet. So now we have the potential to treat and store water locally, but how we do it, we have to be mindful because, well, one, energy is very expensive, and then a lot of these projects, finding these low-hanging fruit or finding these projects, treating that water is also very expensive. So how do you inject the water, and then how do you extract that water is going to be very expensive, and we have to be mindful of all the residents in our community. So for example, where I live in the city of Upland, 70% of the high school students are considered low income and disadvantaged. So are those households going to be able to afford some of these forward-thinking projects? So we got to be thinking about that as well, but then also protecting that water source, locally for us, for the incoming residents that are coming. We're one of the fastest growing regions in California, so is Orange County. So how we manage that water is going to become extremely crucial for the health and safety of all the residents in Orange County and the Inland Empire. We serve 42% of residents in San Bernardino County. But what we are going to see is as we move forward, our energy portfolio is going to increase 3 times over, and frankly put, the residents can't afford to pay that. So we're going to have to get creative on what we do going forward, how we treat that water, what kind of infrastructure we develop, what we approve, and how do we offset some of that cost so that everybody can participate. But we do have, I'd say the largest segment of people coming into our communities is working age men that are leaving other counties like LA County and all these other areas. And so we're looking at very unique things in our region, workforce development being one of them. We're looking at project labor agreements. We're looking at all the variety of things that we can put our residents to work. And I know we talked a little bit about electric vehicles and what that looks like, but by and large, over the last 10 years, our average commute times have increased by 15%. We have 20,000 roads that are considered in disrepair. I think our overall infrastructure gets a C-. So as we're allowing these people to, or as these folks are moving into our region, we've got to be thinking about how do we protect our waterways, but then also how do we partner and put these folks to work, building the infrastructure that we need for our communities.
So let me kind of back up a second, because I too, kind of like Marco, I had that little bit of experience with the deregulation of the electric business here, which we set forth on back in the early 2000s. And it strikes me that it resembles so much of this resiliency conversation. And that's really moving from reliability, which is important, to resiliency, and that being sort of the insurance policy. And the historic way that we did power was you generated, you transmitted, you delivered, and it was done. And then we went to sort of a redundancy, a flexibility to rooftop solar. How do you integrate that? To doing renewables, how do you integrate that? And now you're into a two-way system. It strikes me that we're very similar now than in what we're being asked to do in the water sector, Liz, that the historic ways of source water, gravity fed, over the hill, into the pipes, used, waste, dumped. That's gone. That has to shift, that has to change. And so now we start talking about, again, sort of decentralizing with stormwater capture, recycling, coastal desal, other more localized sources. That's a difficult transition, is it not? I mean, and so the pace of that, how do you choose sort of what makes the most sense, where do you have the most impact, and then how do you get the public to accept that? That's a lot in one question. So if you, in 10 minutes or less.
So this is kind of the exact question that Metropolitan is grappling with right now, is as we look at what our future investments are going to be, how do we make the best decisions based on, the best available science, the impacts we know are coming, but also we have to incorporate a certain amount of uncertainty in our planning, because that's just the nature of where we are, of our condition. And so, the way that we've been approaching it at Metropolitan is recognizing that the delivery of water and reliability remains paramount to our mission. And that is, what we're able to deliver on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly, on an annual basis to our member agencies. At the same time, Metropolitan has the responsibility as the regional entity to be thinking about the long-term resilience. So how do we do that? How do we build the water resources or the infrastructure that we need to be resilient in the face of things like extreme heat, potential power outages, wildfire impacts on power infrastructure or our critical facilities? And so, for us, we're really thinking about this kind of multi-criteria approach where we will be evaluating all of our investments according to not just how much water it's going to deliver and how much it's going to cost, but how it's going to survive in a climate-changed environment, how it's going to impact our communities, and whether or not we're actually providing some environmental co-benefits that can help further sustain that resilience into the future. So that's been our approach of trying, we're really in the thick of coming up with a decision-making framework that helps us make the most informed decisions to ensure we can continue to thrive.
Tish, I know you touched on it in your opening kind of comments, this issue between localized solutions and yet still redundancy and flexibility, and the combination of both ocean desal as one of those local resources. How do you, I mean, because you guys are, I mean, this is the forefront, right? You're challenging. We talked to Marco about this, the last 10 years in the energy sector. The example was, hey, we've doubled electric rates. And so there's a precursor there. But as you're looking at then localized water and then the redundancy, I mean, again, for resiliency, it's belts, suspenders, it's insurance. How have you really, how's your board look at that? When you come in and you prioritize, how do you make those recommendations? We got to go here first, this makes the most impact, and that's where we got to go next, second, third, fourth, and then you get to be watery and blend it with the larger family at Metropolitan.
Yes, yes. That's a great question. I just want to applaud Metropolitan for the process that they're doing for their Camp for Water, which is the process Liz just explained about looking at news sources. We've been part of that and just really appreciate how that's been led and walked through. You know, in San Diego, we're, as far as local resources, I mentioned building the desal plant. We also made a deal on the Colorado River, and then we have 22 member agencies who are also doing their own local supply projects. So we went from, you know, one source of supply to more than I can count on my 10 fingers for you. And what's fascinating to me as we look at our board sort of wrestle with this is, you know, when you get that many projects and you get a 35-member board, some are going to like some of the projects, some are going to hate some of the projects. And so there's a lot of passion on our board when certain projects are brought up. Some are always in the crosshairs, and there's a lot of board members in the room. I know you know how this is. Every time anytime that project comes up, whether it's in the budget or whether there's an action item that the carpet needs to be replaced in that room, that's your chance, right? That's your chance to finally get that project and just kill it, or make it blossom, or do something else. And so we have a lot of those going on. But what fascinates me is the next big project in San Diego that's going to create local supply is being regulatory driven on the wastewater side. And that's Pure Water with City of San Diego. And so when we work with them, they're our member agency. We provide them water. In the future, they're going to need less water from us. And that's going to change how we, you know, finance things and how we charge our other member agencies. It's a very, very big challenge. And they are regulatorily mandated to create this water source. And there's no turning back. And we're going to have a whole lot more extra water in San Diego. So if anyone's looking for reliable water supplies, Dan Denham, our general manager, is out talking with all sorts of folks to you know, maximize the resources that we have for the betterment of all SoCal or California or potentially even beyond.
Well, and that really speaks to some of the local need, right? How you have to design project around the geography, the hydrology of San Diego, because unlike our friends here in Orange County who produce a whole ton of recycled water, they got a place to put it. You got to use it or lose it.
That's right.
And that makes a huge difference in terms of how you then structure your business model, does it not?
That's absolutely correct. We're not blessed with a aquifer or groundwater storage like Orange County is. So hats off to Orange County. That's a fantastic use of that resource. Ours are really shallow, or they're super deep, or completely non-existent. So it's just not cost effective. So when we look at a pure water project, we're looking at reservoirs. And then changing the hold time of those reservoirs, or potentially expanding those reservoirs, how we operate them, what they look like, or you know, potentially direct potable reuse. And what's fascinating about direct potable reuse, when you look at a regional system like San Diego County, back to our 22 member agencies, the minute you put a drop of potable reuse into the system, the entire system needs to be rated to be able to handle that. And it reminds me of the back when I was in the wastewater days, with the concept that if you had a 55-gallon drum of drinking water and you put 1 drop of sewage in it, the whole thing becomes sewage. It's the same thing with these regulations for potable reuse. So that's also a dynamic with the system where, it would make the most sense technically. If you're an engineer like me, you want to just know the easy technical solution, the one that's elegant, to just use a regional system, but the regulations are appropriately trying to protect public health, but also a big challenge in that area.
So Marco, kind of question same with you on the business model side. So as you're looking at the various things, I mean, we know IUA, very big, very important. You just look to your folks to the east, at Eastern Municipal and Western, and say, hey, fellas, just ladies, follow us. We'll just show you how it's done. Is that how it works in the Inland Empire?
You're going to get me beat up after that.
Yeah, Brenda's steering you down right here from the front row now. So because you guys have experience with a variety of different alternative energy types of projects, and you've got then your A, B, and C list of water projects coming, talk a little bit about your business model, how you fit underneath the Met family, but then you have your own member agencies to serve. Right. All of us have some intermediary role to play. Very few of us actually stare ratepayers in the face with the bill every month, but you still have to make the decisions that make that system work. So tell me a little bit about your business modeling at IUA.
I'd back up a little bit also in saying that, being relatively new to the water side of things, coming in with a fresh set of eyes and seeing this vast potential, we have a lot of opportunities to maximize and capture water in our area and where we live, but our member agencies are incredibly passionate about how we pursue those projects and at what costs are going to come to the individual ratepayers, and rightfully so. We have to deal with the public, so we have to be responsible how we do that and how we're able to capture that water. But overall, I think 10 years ago we were at something like 260 gallons per capita and that's down to 160. So the conservation is happening in our region and it's happening fast. But how do you charge now when you're seeing less sales? You're seeing increased conservation, but you still have the same O&M costs. You still have the same treatment costs. You have all the costs remain the same. And in fact, during COVID, we all saw that the cost of consumables, the cost of chemicals, all those costs kind of went through the roof. And so, how do you go forward? How do you present a reasonable study, a reasonable rate study, and you provide reasonable rates for your constituents? It's something that we deal with, that we're dealing with all the time. We're very fortunate to have low water rates where we are, but that's going to have to change. That's inevitable, and most of us as electeds have to deal with that. We have to face that, and just
because every elected official loves to be able to walk in front of their constituency. I raised your fill in the blank fees, taxes, rates, whatever.
That's right. I doubled your rates. You're welcome.
I doubled your rates. Thank me for that later.
Right. But no, you really have to be mindful of that. And also, like I mentioned earlier, we have residents in our community that are disadvantaged, considered low income. So we have to be very, very mindful of the projects that we're approving and what that's going to do to all the members, and even the folks on the margins, and what that's going to do to them, and how that's going to impact them monthly. So.
But at the same time, then, okay, so the ultimate backup, you've all touched on it to some degree. You're providing an essential service. You're talking about health and safety concerns. That's not something you can have one day of mishap over. Is that part of the conversation then? Is that we're going to try to do these things, we're going to decarbonize the grid, we're going to create renewability, we're going to create this new resilient portfolio, and we're going to help you do that to protect health and safety, and therefore it has this value. Isn't that then part of that change then, the different conversation we have about creating value proposition as opposed to reliability? Liz?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think, we've been going through this process for a couple of years, talking about what are our values, what are our priorities, and reliability will always remain paramount to an agency like Metropolitan, whose mission is all about ensuring that we can deliver safe and reliable water. At the same time, it has been very clear that there are additional values that we can achieve through our assurance of reliability. And I think that, as we also are exploring conversations around our own business model and the challenges that it faces, it's really, I think, illuminating so many opportunities for achieving those types of additional values. So to what Tish was talking about of, there might be more water in some places of our service area at certain times and less water in other places, and what role can we play to help build regional resilience through a regional entity like Metropolitan that could be financially viable, that would provide the kind of resilience and assurance, but also help achieve the financial sustainability of our member agencies at the same time. And so I think really focusing on the types of opportunities and many different values we can get through our investments in localized and drought-proof types of resources like water reuse, like water recycling, and then take advantage of those, the opportunities that climate change is presenting. At some times, we have more water than we can manage. So how can we take the infrastructure that we have that is based on the past and improve it in a way that allows us to adapt to a changing climate? And that presents opportunities not just in terms of new water supplies for capturing and reuse and conveyance, but it also provides economic opportunities for us to create, jobs and local economic growth through those investments. So I really think that, as someone who works on a daily basis on sort of thinking about how we adapt to climate change, it really gives me a lot of hope to think about the opportunities that it presents in addition to the challenges that we face.
Tish, where does new technology and innovation fit into this equation?
Absolutely. Are you talking? Did you say Tish?
Tish, Liz, Tish, Marco, Tish, Liz, Tish, and Marco.
If you want to talk about.
No, go for it.
Okay. Technology is one of those areas where the first cut of it tends to be the most expensive, right? And then we find ways that it becomes more appropriate. What we're finding with the technology that we're looking at in particular with regard to this pump storage, while yes, we're very interested in decarbonization, the last time I looked at our mission statement, it's not listed there, nor is it something that I'm hearing from our board that they want. But I'll tell you what they do want, and they want affordability. And affordability is something that is brought up, I would say, at every board meeting now that we have. And so we're being challenged with what are you going to do to make our water more affordable. Thank you for all the reliability. It might be a little more than we thought we were purchasing at the time. Now we want affordability. And so our energy storage project actually is, while it has all of these wonderful decarbonization benefits, energy storage benefits and so forth, I would not be being transparent with you if I didn't say that we're looking for it for the revenue generation that we are hoping to get out of it. It is something that we hope to do through a public-private partnership. We were very fortunate to receive $18 million in state funds to further the project and get through the environmental. But ultimately, someday, we hope to have an off-taker, and we hope to create a revenue source from an existing asset that is already there for the reliability of the region to help offset our very expensive rates at this time.
Hey, Liz, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off in there, but you were going to comment on new technology and where that fit?
I think it plays a really big role in this transition, and I think, just like we've seen, technologies grow and become less expensive over time, whether it's, our phones or our computers or what have you, we're also seeing that in the renewable energy sector, in the zero emission vehicle sector, and those things take time, but I think it plays an enormous role, and I think that agencies like Metropolitan, we've really invested in piloting different technologies, whether it's around, the way that we operate our pumps or the way that we can produce or save energy, or the way that we manage our lands and our, our levees or our infrastructure. I think that technology is going to play an extremely large role in us being able to meter and track and best manage our infrastructure moving forward.
Marco, I know because you're still in the power game, anything you're seeing on the horizon as a new technology you think might be one of those game changers that could be implemented, you think, sometime in the future?
Well, I'm a big fan of small modular reactors, nuclear power plants, small package power plants that are easily deliverable, and they're being tested now and approved. Don't see that happening anytime in our future here.
Like I say, wait a minute, I'm gonna just, as the communications guy for a second, nuclear returns to California in the form of a distributed resource.
That's right. That would be fantastic, and I think that's really what we're gonna need, something big in that sense to really help us meet that carbon neutrality, to really help shift what we do here in the state of California. Because what we're saying is, back in the day, you had 10 years ago or so, we had once through cooling 316B that took all those coastal plants and decommissioned them all because of warming or ocean water warming. And so what we found is that really wasn't viable, and it got all the way up to Diablo Canyon, and that's 9% of California's power. And so that was scheduled to be decommissioned in 23, 24, then 24, 25. And now it's been pushed back to 2035, I believe. So we're really starting to see that we need these large projects. We need this large spinning mass, this large spinning reserve to power the state. And we can't continue. Once we shifted off this coastal generation, we went inland. And a lot of the inland generation is fossil fuel generation. And fossil fuels now for cooling are using the recycled water. They're using cooling towers. Something depends on the size of the actual generator, about 15,000 acre foot a year or something to that effect. So we really need to be mindful of how we're going to generate power going forward in the future, and how our agencies are going to step up and possibly create and invest in some of that new technology. It might seem like a radical idea, or might seem like a large idea for a water agency, but again, when IUA started, we didn't have any batteries, we didn't have wind, we didn't have solar panels, we didn't have all these things. And so somebody before me with the experience was able to build that as part of our business model, and it saves our residents quite a tremendous amount of money because we locked in at a much lower kilowatt hour. So I think something like that, and partnerships locally and partnerships throughout the state to invest in that infrastructure, I think would be vital.
Let me test your technology knowledge for a minute. In all of this, where does hydrogen fit? I mean, again, you're talking about something that technically is water intensive to produce, but then presents an opportunity on the power side as part of that decarbonization of the grid. Do you see where hydrogen has a future? Is hydrogen part of our mix, or is that something we should be maybe transitional and kind of looking beyond?
Put me on the spot there.
Yes, I am. That's what I'm here for. Fritz is the nice guy.
Nice.
I'm the one to put you on the spot.
I do see hydrogen as being a part of our infrastructure going forward. I don't see us meeting those targets and goals the way we are now, because it's fossil fuel intensive to produce that hydrogen. But if we were to invest in nuclear power, that's clean energy, base loaded, whatever it's rated at, and you might not need that energy at 2 o'clock in the morning. So then those resources can be shifted to creating hydrogen technology or hydrogen itself. And make that available either for the transportation sector or whoever's interested in purchasing that product. But yeah, I definitely see a future where hydrogen.
Now you're drawing me back to my infancy. Remember when San Onofre was first developed, it was going to be too cheap to meter.
Nice.
Anybody have a gold medallion home?
Nice.
And where are we back to? All electric homes. So we do kind of repeat ourselves. So Liz, does hydrogen fit into any of the matrix and any of the technologies that you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to play a role overall in this decarbonization pathway. There's definitely some sectors that are going to be hard to electrify. And so, when we look through our climate action plan, our goals are around zero emissions, and that can include hydrogen, both in sort of those heavy-duty vehicles that may require it, in addition to sort of utility-scale power supply. And I do think we need to be mindful of the water use around it as we develop it. I think there are multiple ways that we will probably discover in order to create, and I would just focus on green hydrogen produced through using green energy or renewable energy. But I do think it's going to play a role eventually, for sure.
Tish, is there any talk about hydrogen in San Diego area, I know there's a lot of talk in the Central Valley and sort of where that might be, how it might be transported, but has anybody talked anything about?
No, not so much, but I heard it's water intensive, so we do have water. Did I mention that part earlier? So if there was a need
There you go.
to generate it down there,
You're looking for a hydrogen generation facility in San Diego. Welcome customers. Okay, so let me stress you for just one more minute, because that's my job, Marco.
All right.
Okay, so at the same time, so we're talking about using, in the previous panel, water conservation as a way of life. It's one of those issues at the state level. I personally use the term water use efficiency, energy use efficiency, because we can always be more efficient in how we're using it. But so long as we're sort of talking about downward pressure on use, we still have economic drivers and other technology drivers like artificial intelligence, the data centers that go with that. In order to provide that service, you're now putting pressure back on both water and energy consumption with pretty high intensity. And I'm just wondering, if you're looking at that kind of technological growth, that's, quote, load growth, that's new customers. Are those incompatible with what we're trying to do to meet climate resiliency for the state?
Do you want me to take that one?
Hey, anybody jump right straight into that one, because now I've got you on the edge of the diving board.
Yeah, so we have incorporated some AI into our business model and really provide quick feedback on water usage and water efficiency and what we're doing locally. But yeah, a lot of that AI technology that's coming in, frankly, I don't know too much about it, so I'll defer to somebody else to talk a little bit about some AI stuff, but I do know we have incorporated it in our business model, and we do get feedback on what's going on in our system and what water usage is looking like. So.
Like I may certainly get Silicon Valley and the number of data centers they've got there, and if you're near Google, yeah, you're going to have some higher usage. I don't know if anybody's done the mapping in Southern California and kind of where those things are. I know there's some significant data centers in the South Bay area, and so that was always an issue from a reliability standpoint, making sure you had the distribution and the wires that got there. But Liz, where does that fit into, and those that would say, how do I grow the economy? How do I go to that next evolution for the jobs and industry, and not just look at sort of what I've been doing and changing that?
I mean, we have to think about all of it. That's the whole, and I think that's what's really important about having these strategic plans around carbon neutrality is you need to incorporate what it is that you operate and control. And so I have worked closely with, our manager over our IT group who, we've invested in locations that are holding, servers. And, we've worked towards achieving, green certifications related to those to enable and deploy renewable energy around those sites and efficiency measures around those sites. So, this is all about smart growth. We acknowledge that the economy is going to grow, that we need to build housing, that we need to expand in places, but we need to do it in the most not only cost-effective, but energy efficient and water efficient way. And I think we have the technology, we have the expertise to be able to do that.
Great. Now I'm looking, because the clock is staring us also in the face. We're into like the last 4 or 5 minutes, and I don't want to assume for the moment that I haven't seen anybody race to the forefront and said, I got a question burning in the back of the room, other than Larry Dick staring me down with the evil eyes. So as I look into the lights and blind myself, does anybody have a burning question as we start to get close to winding down here that we have not touched on, that we have at least stimulated a thought to you? Because the world, according to Charley, is always an interesting world, as Marco has already pointed out.
That's correct.
All right, so I'm going to ask this question then. So here we are in that state of change. I've also shared with others that for those of you that have been into any kind of a health issue, that the doctors can look at you and tell you, if you don't stop doing this and start doing that, you're going to die. And 85% of those people can't make that change. And here we are talking fundamentally about changing how we view water development, water use, water pricing, in conjunction with energy use, energy production, energy cost. What is your advice? Now I'm going to take you out of your technical world into how do you help move that change along without people rebelling or feeling like they're being forced into something they just want it to remain the same. Liz, you get a lot of that, I know. People who want it to remain the same, and gosh, if we could just go back to how it was back when. How do we help transition people through that with data, with information, with helping people control their own future?
Well, I mean, I think those things are all important, but I think it's really about, building trust and relationships, and the way that we get things done is through working together. That, no one person or no one agency, not even one state, is going to be able to achieve the ambitious goals and to make the impact that we need to have. And so, I think the way that, we've been trying to approach it at Metropolitan is we have 26 member agencies. We're serving, nearly 20 million people. But we also ourselves have an agency of, almost 2,000 employees. And so, I think the best way that we can approach it is by, building that trust and moving at the speed of trust, basically, and also always backing it up with the data, with the information that makes it sort of undeniable.
Tish, how do you guys define success, and how do you get people in your region to that place of success?
I think what Liz said was beautiful, and I'm not sure I could add anything to that. Sometimes you got to get a good kick in the butt, frankly. We had 2 of our member agencies say that our water was too expensive and then leave all those operating costs for the other 22. So sometimes you have to go through something, you have to feel the pain, and that sometimes motivates the change.
Good quick kick in the butt. Marco?
I will say, as a relatively new policymaker, less than 4 years in this role now, I'm inspired by the amount of professionals that I get to interact with, especially everybody here in this room, and some of the projects that have already been accomplished in Southern California, that you can now take that expertise and bring it to us in the Inland Empire and help us meet some of the challenges that we have in our region. So I'm really grateful for your dedication to your profession, and for what that's going to mean for us here in Southern California, particularly for us in the Inland Empire, where we have so much work to do on behalf of our residents. So thank you for that.
Well, that's going to bring us to the close of this program, because according to the timer, we have a hard commercial out. I want to thank you for inviting us, and we hope this was informative. So for Tish, Liz, and Marco, we thank you for your expertise. But I will leave you with this, because at the end of the day, I think they hit on it. It's about trust, and it's about relationships. And we do a really good job of getting together and meeting. As a water community, we could do a whole lot better in coalescing ourselves into a single voice and going and working with legislative leaders and others to really make the difference. So we want to thank you. I'm getting the swift kick in the butt to get out. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you so much.